Hey, my name is Rebecca Simmons. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of the moment I realized that sometimes revenge isn't just sweet, it's necessary. It all started with a text message. Just one. I was sitting on my porch in Aurora, Illinois, the sun already halfway down behind the rooftops, with a mug of stale coffee in my hands and a million thoughts racing in my head. I had just finished a grueling week at work. Accounting firm deadlines, client emergencies, and a boss who thought work-life balance was just a corporate myth. So when I saw the ping from the family group chat, my heart did a little leap. Maybe they were planning something to unwind together. Maybe a quick weekend trip. A cabin? A lake house? A girl can dream. But when I opened it, my heart didn't leap. It dropped. There they were. A dozen pictures. My parents. My two older brothers. Their wives, my cousins, all of them, laughing, holding piña coladas by a turquoise ocean, arms wrapped around each other in matching resort t-shirts that read, Simmons Family Summer 2023. And me? I wasn't even in the picture, because I wasn't there, because I wasn't invited. I scrolled in silence, image after image, group selfies at the buffet, TikTok dances by the pool, best vacation ever, captions with sun emojis and hashtags, and not a single soul had even thought to mention it to me. Not a call, not a heads up, nothing. I felt this strange cocktail of emotions bubbling up, not just sadness but betrayal, that aching sort of exclusion that wraps around your chest and squeezes. I didn't even know they were planning a vacation. I was part of that family, wasn't I? It wasn't always like this. Before I continue with this story, drop your name in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. I want to know who's out there, who's really listening. Because this isn't just a story about a vacation. It's about betrayal. It's about being pushed aside by your own family and having to decide if you'll stay invisible or rise. What you're about to hear is deeply personal. Every word is true. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll see how I turned being left out into something so powerful they couldn't ignore me anymore. And if you're feeling this story already, hit that like button and subscribe for more. I grew up right here in Aurora, in a 2-story white house on East Galena Boulevard. Middle child. Always the peacemaker. I wasn't the loud one or the rebellious one. I was the reliable one. The one who helped mom cook dinner while the others ran wild. The one who covered for my brothers when they sneaked out. The one who sent birthday cards when everyone else forgot. But somehow, over the years, that turned into me being invisible, the dependable sister who didn't need anything, the one who always said, it's okay, even when it wasn't. I looked at those photos again. Did they even miss me? Did anyone ask where I was? I put the phone down and stared into the yard. The air was warm and still, the kind of evening that begged you to go on a long walk and clear your head. But I didn't want to clear my head. I wanted to remember this feeling. This rejection, this sting, because something shifted in me that day. I wasn't going to cry about it anymore. I wasn't going to call them and ask why. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table. I was going to build my own. And it all started with one simple, audacious idea. If they didn't want me at their vacation, I'd buy the resort next door. Yes, you heard that right. I know it sounds insane. Believe me, I laughed the moment the thought crossed my mind. I was just an accountant, not some millionaire business mogul. I didn't even know how to buy a resort. But that night, something inside me clicked. It wasn't about money. It was about power, control, dignity, and a deep, buried need to prove that I was so much more than the girl they always left out. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed up researching the resort they were at, an all-inclusive called Coral Breeze in the Florida Keys. Beautiful place. 5 stars. Family-friendly, expensive, the kind of place we'd never gone when we were younger. And then, I saw it. A listing. A private beachfront villa for sale. Right next door. Not a full resort, sure, but it had 6 luxury suites, a private chef, a pool, a view of the same beach they were sipping margaritas on. And the price tag? High, but not impossible. I had savings, good credit, an inheritance I hadn't touched. Stocks I could liquidate. It would take almost everything I had. But I was ready to risk it, because I wasn't just buying a building. I was buying my voice back, You see, this story isn't about money. It's about all the little ways people push you aside, in families, in friendships, in life, until one day you realize you've disappeared from the picture, not because you walked away, but because no one fought to keep you in it. And I'd had enough. They thought I'd sit there in Aurora, sipping cold coffee, watching their perfect lives unfold on a screen. They thought I'd stay quiet. They were wrong. The next morning, I called the real estate agent. Her name was Denise. Bubbly voice, sharp mind. We clicked instantly. I told her I wanted the property. Sight unseen, no games. Full cash offer if needed. She was shocked. "Are you sure?" she asked. I smiled. Absolutely. A week later, I was on a plane to Florida. Alone, but not lonely. I stepped off the plane in a white sundress, sandals, and a purpose stitched into every step. Denise picked me up in her cherry red Jeep, and as we drove toward the Keys, I watched the coastline shimmer under the afternoon sun. The closer we got, the more real it became. And then, there it was. A gate, a gravel drive, a modern villa tucked behind palm trees and privacy. I could hear the faint laughter from coral breeze just beyond the trees. It was perfect. And that's where this story really begins. Because buying that villa wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of my transformation, of the plan, of the whispers, of the moment they realized I wasn't the quiet girl anymore. They had their vacation. Now it was time for mine. But mine would come with a message, loud, unapologetic, and unforgettable. Because sometimes when people leave you out, you don't just walk away. You build something louder right next door. When I first stepped into the villa, I didn't breathe for a moment. The air inside was cool and scented with lemon and fresh wood. The ceilings stretched high above with exposed beams, and large glass windows offered a perfect view of the sea glimmering just beyond the palms. There was a calmness to the place. But beneath that calm, I felt a quiet fire building inside me. I had done it. I was standing in a place that belonged to me, bought with my own hands, my own will. I wasn't a guest. I was the owner. Denise handed me the keys and gave me a wide grin. "She's all yours," she said. And I just nodded, not yet ready to put the victory into words. The truth is, the moment didn't feel like a victory yet. Not until they knew. Not until they saw me. Over the next 2 days, I immersed myself in everything. I met with the staff that had managed the villa before. The housekeeper, Rosa, a quiet woman with eyes like soft ink, and Victor, the groundskeeper who spoke little but worked hard. They stayed on. I hired a local chef named Arlo, who had a talent for seafood and sass. Slowly, I began putting together a place not just for myself, but for something bigger. I wasn't just here to rest. I was building a stage, and on that stage, they would watch me become someone they couldn't ignore. I spent the first week settling in. While the Simmons clan posted boomerangs from jet skis and dinner selfies on their stories, I stayed in the shadows, watching, waiting. I walked the beach early in the mornings and late at night, sometimes catching glimpses of their silhouettes at the bonfire pits or sipping drinks at the bar. They were so close, but not one of them saw me, and I preferred it that way, at least for now. I started planning a soft opening event at the villa, not just a celebration, but a message. I reached out to people I knew from back home, some former clients, acquaintances from college who now ran travel blogs or lifestyle pages. I invited them for a weekend escape, free stay, 5-star meals, yoga on the terrace, sunset wine tasting, anything to put the place on the map. And they came. The first Friday of August, cars started pulling in. People spilled out laughing, posing, snapping photos with their phones as they explored the villa. Rebecca's place, someone called it. The name stuck. We had live music by the pool. Arlo served grilled lobster tail with mango chutney, and Rosa lit torches that gave the whole place a golden glow. At night, the villa hummed with soft jazz and the clinking of wine glasses. I stood by the railing on the upper balcony, dressed in a navy silk dress, hair pinned up, watching the evening unfold. From across the row of palms, I could see Coral Breeze, the resort where my family was staying. Their lights were dimmer, quieter. I could almost see their silhouettes at the outdoor restaurant, moving around like shadows. I wondered if they'd noticed us, if they heard the laughter, the music, the life happening just a few yards away. I hoped they had. The next morning, I walked barefoot to the beach at sunrise. The ocean was a soft gray blue, waves lazy and warm. I sipped coffee from a ceramic mug and felt something settle in my chest. Not peace, exactly. Not yet. But something close to satisfaction. Then I saw them. My brother Lucas and his wife Tara. They were walking along the shore in their athletic resort gear, clearly on their morning exercise routine. They didn't recognize me at first. Why would they? I was in sunglasses, hair in a low ponytail, barefoot, holding a cup, not part of their world. But then, Lucas paused. His gaze lingered, his brow furrowed. Rebecca? I tilted my head slightly. Morning. Tara blinked. Wait, what are you doing here? I smiled. Oh, I bought the villa next door. Their silence was immediate. Lucas opened his mouth, closed it, then forced a laugh. You mean, you're staying there? No, I bought it. Tara blinked again, then laughed as if I were joking. Lucas looked back toward the villa, his jaw tightening. You're serious? Completely. He didn't say congratulations, didn't say, wow. He just nodded slowly, eyes still wide. Tara gave me a tight smile. Well, that's unexpected. Isn't it? I said, sipping my coffee, my smile unwavering. They stood there like tourists who had just been told they'd lost their reservation. And then, awkwardly, they walked on. I didn't look back. Later that day, it started. My phone buzzed with messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in months. Hey, are you here in the Keys? Just saw Lucas's post. Did you really buy a place? Wait, are you staying at that villa with the pool lights? I answered none of them. The next day, I posted a single photo. Me, in the pool, glass of wine in hand, sunset in the background. Caption: sometimes you find peace exactly where they told you you didn't belong. It blew up. Comments poured in. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers. People loved the boldness, the vibe, the energy. It became a moment. Rebecca Simmons, the girl left behind, had just bought the view next door, and everyone wanted to know more. My family, of course, was stunned. By Sunday evening, my mom called. I didn't answer. She texted instead. Can we talk? I feel like something's going on. I stared at the screen. The woman who hadn't told me about the vacation now wanted to talk. But it wasn't the right time yet. I had more to show. I began hosting events every weekend. Beach yoga, brunches, wine nights, networking getaways for women in business. Slowly, the villa became a name, a symbol. People wrote about it, tagged it, shared it. And with each event, each smile, each toast under the stars, I felt myself becoming someone I hadn't been in years. Not the quiet sister, not the reliable daughter, but a force. Still, the messages from my family came in waves. Confused, defensive, curious. I knew what they were thinking. How did she do this? Why didn't she say anything? Why didn't we include her? And eventually, how do we fix it? But I didn't want apologies. Not yet. Because the story wasn't finished. They needed to feel it first. The weight of what it meant to exclude someone who had always shown up. To erase someone who had only ever wanted to belong. I wasn't looking for revenge in the way movies show it. No drama, no shouting matches. My revenge was quieter, more graceful, but sharp. It was letting them see me, truly see me, for the first time in years. Not as the sister who tagged along, but as the woman who no longer waited for invitations, and who had built a sanctuary of her own. I guess by now you know this isn't just a story about a vacation, or a house, or even about being left out. It's about identity, about shedding everything you've been told you are and choosing who you want to be. And for me, that moment, when everything changed, came not with a bang, but with an invitation. Yes, an actual invitation. A week after Lucas and Tara had their awkward beach encounter with me, my mother sent another text. Not one of those passive-aggressive ones. Not a, call me when you have a minute, but an actual message that stopped me in my tracks. It said, we're having a family dinner at the Coral Breeze Terrace on Friday night. We'd love to have you join us. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No mention of why they left me out of the entire vacation in the first place. Just a dinner. Just join us. As if nothing had happened. I sat with that text for a long time. I read it over and over, like it was written in code. And in a way, it was. It wasn't really a gesture of peace. It was damage control. It was their way of trying to bring me back in before I got too far away, before the girl they'd forgotten turned into a woman they couldn't reach. But something inside me stirred. I wasn't going to say no. I wasn't going to ghost them. That wasn't who I was. Not anymore. I'd spent too many years fading into the background. This was my chance to step forward, on my terms. So I replied, "I'll be there." The day of the dinner, I got ready slowly. I picked out a cream-colored jumpsuit with a plunging neckline that felt bold but elegant. I curled my hair loosely and wore gold hoop earrings that caught the light with every turn. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the girl they used to forget. I saw a woman with presence, a woman who had built something that couldn't be ignored. I arrived at Coral Breeze just as the sun was melting into the ocean. The terrace restaurant overlooked the beach, the tables lit with string lights and flickering candles. I spotted them immediately. My family. All clustered at a long table near the railing. The laughter, the inside jokes, the clinking of glasses. It was like stepping into a movie I wasn't cast in, until I was. Lucas saw me first, then my mom, then the rest followed, one by one, turning their heads like a slow ripple through still water. The silence that followed was almost delicious. Not hostile, not angry, just stunned. They hadn't expected me to walk in like that, with confidence, with grace, like I belonged there, because I did. "Rebecca," my mom said, standing halfway, arms reaching for an awkward hug. I let her embrace me but didn't sink into it. I just smiled politely and sat down across from her. Everyone else murmured hellos, some sincere, some coated in guilt. I let them all simmer in their own silence for a moment before speaking. "It's a beautiful view," I said, glancing toward the ocean. "But I think mine's better." My cousin Greg laughed nervously. "You've really got a place next door, huh?" "I do," I said, folding my napkin onto my lap. "Rebecca's place." Lucas chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Bit dramatic, don't you think?" "No," I said, leveling my eyes with his. "What's dramatic is planning a full family vacation and forgetting one of your own." The table fell silent. My mother opened her mouth, probably to smooth things over, but I lifted my hand gently. "It's fine," I said. "I'm not here to argue. I just want to enjoy a meal with the people I used to think of as home." I don't know what I expected after that. Maybe tension, maybe conflict. But what I got was something stranger. Compliance. They were quiet, unsure, disarmed. My presence alone seemed to force them into a kind of reckoning. As the night went on, they tried. They asked questions about the villa, about how I bought it, who helped me, what I planned to do with it. I answered each one with ease. Never smug, never petty, just clear and unshaken. And I could see it happening, in their eyes. The recalibration. They were seeing me again. Not the quiet sister, not the helper, but the one who dared to step outside the script, who didn't wait for a role to be handed to her. After dinner, I thanked them and left. I didn't linger for dessert or cocktails. I walked back along the shoreline in the dark, the sound of waves brushing against my bare feet, my heels in one hand. I was halfway back to the villa when I heard footsteps behind me. It was Tara. She jogged up next to me, her face tight with something between guilt and curiosity. "Rebecca," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why now? Why, all of this?" I stopped walking, looked at her. "Because I got tired of waiting," I said. "I got tired of shrinking." Tara nodded slowly. "I think some of us didn't realize you felt that way." "I know," I said. "That's kind of the point." She looked out at the water. "Lucas is struggling with all this, with you doing this so publicly." "It's not about being public," I said. "It's about being real. He doesn't get to control how I heal." Tara bit her lip and gave a small nod. "You were always stronger than we gave you credit for." I didn't respond to that. There was nothing to say. She turned to walk back, and I stood there for a moment longer, watching the waves. That dinner changed everything. Word spread. Family friends started messaging me. Distant relatives who had never shown interest were suddenly curious about the villa. Some of them even asked to book a stay. I smiled every time, because that dinner wasn't just a turning point for me. It was a mirror held up to all of them, and what they saw wasn't the version of me they'd known. It was the one they'd never expected. And then came the real shift. An article. A lifestyle blogger who had stayed at the villa during my first weekend wrote a feature titled, "She bought the villa next to her family's resort after they left her out," and turned it into paradise. It went viral. Comments exploded with support. People related. They'd been left out too. They'd been overlooked too. And now they had a name to rally around. Rebecca Simmons. I became a symbol. And suddenly, everything I did mattered. The villa had a 6-month wait list. Arlo was getting offers from restaurants in Miami. Rosa was teaching private cooking classes on weekends. Victor expanded the garden. We were thriving, but I wasn't done. Because the story wasn't just about reclaiming my place. It was about rewriting the ending. If you followed this far, you probably know this story isn't just about revenge anymore. It started that way, sure. When I first saw those pictures of my family on vacation without me, the fire that lit inside me wasn't gentle. It was white-hot, built on years of silence, on decades of being the dependable one who never asked for much, never demanded to be seen. But something surprising happened as things unfolded, something I hadn't expected. I started to change. At first it was subtle. I walked taller, spoke slower, listened more carefully, not to others, but to myself. It was like I was learning my own voice for the first time. And then it became deeper. I wasn't just acting confident. I was becoming someone new, someone whole, someone free from needing anyone's approval, especially theirs. But don't mistake me. This wasn't some magical transformation that happened overnight. Growth hurts. It tears things down before it builds them up. And I had plenty of moments where I wondered if any of this had been worth it. About a month after the infamous dinner at Coral Breeze, I had my first real emotional collapse. It was a Thursday morning. The weather unusually stormy for the Keys. Rain had pounded the villa all night, the wind howling against the windows like some primal scream I couldn't shut out. I'd barely slept. I sat on the edge of my bed, wrapped in a blanket, my hands shaking, not from cold, but from the weight of everything I hadn't let myself feel. I thought I'd feel stronger by now. I thought the villa, the attention, the articles, the power, I thought all of it would heal the old wounds. But healing doesn't come from outside things. And I realized that morning that part of me was still the girl on the porch in Aurora, with a mug of cold coffee and a heart full of disappointment. The woman who had built a paradise was still carrying the scars of a girl who never got picked. I cried. I'm not ashamed of it. I sobbed into my knees for a good 20 minutes, just letting it all rise and fall. The grief, the anger, the memories, the birthdays missed, the, "Oh, we forgot to tell you," the way everyone just assumed I'd always be okay. Because I was the strong one, the easy one, the quiet one. That breakdown didn't destroy me. It liberated me. Because when I finally stood up, washed my face, and looked in the mirror, I didn't just see strength, I saw truth. For the first time, I wasn't hiding any part of myself. Not the pain, not the power. Both existed. Both were mine. And I decided from that moment that the villa wasn't just going to be my sanctuary, it was going to be a space for women like me, women who'd been overlooked, pushed aside, taken for granted. I didn't want to just host yoga weekends and luxury brunches anymore. I wanted to create something bigger. So I launched a retreat series called Unseen No More. I partnered with coaches, therapists, and mentors. Women from all over began applying, teachers, nurses, mothers, artists, each one with a story of having been invisible for too long. And we gave them space. We gave them stillness. We gave them fire. We gathered around fire pits and told our truths. We cried and laughed and danced barefoot under the stars. We wrote letters we never sent. We screamed into the ocean. And I watched women transform. But here's the twist. Every time one of them found her voice, I found another piece of mine. It was as if I had created a mirror in every soul that walked through those doors. They came thinking I was helping them. But really, they were helping me. It was at one of these retreats that I met Lana. She was in her 40s, newly divorced, had 3 kids, and the kind of raw honesty that made people listen. She wasn't soft-spoken like me. She had fire from the start. But it was unfocused, tangled up in betrayal and fear. One night, after a long workshop, we sat by the pool, and she said something I'll never forget. "You didn't build this place because you were angry," she said. "You built it because no one ever made space for your light. So you built your own sun." That line broke me open again, but in the best way. I carried her words with me like armor, because they were true. This hadn't just been about revenge. It had been about survival, about finally taking up space without apologizing for it. Of course, not everyone understood what I was doing. Some of my family still thought it was petty. Over the holidays, I got a call from my dad. We don't talk often. He's the kind of man who expresses love through chores and silence. He asked if I was coming back to Aurora for Christmas. I told him no. I'd be hosting a retreat for women who didn't have anywhere else to go. There was a pause on the line. Then he said, "You've changed." And I replied, "No, Dad. I've just stopped hiding." He didn't say anything for a while. Then, softly, almost like a confession, he said, "I wish I had known how much it hurt you. I thought you didn't care." I could have let the silence swallow that moment, but I didn't. I said, "I stopped telling people it hurt when no one listened." He cleared his throat. "I see you now, Rebecca." It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Over time, some family members started showing up, not to Coral Breeze, but to my place. My cousin Sarah came with her teenage daughter for one of the weekend retreats. She cried when we hugged. My Aunt Denise sent a handwritten note. Even Lucas eventually sent a text. "If I'd known how left out you felt, I would have done something. I guess I thought you were fine." And that's the thing. People always think you're fine when you never make noise. But silence isn't peace. It's just what we accept when we're afraid we don't deserve more. Not anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't chasing revenge in the traditional sense. What I was building now came from something stronger than rage. It came from clarity. And there's nothing more powerful than a woman who sees herself clearly. I started journaling every morning. I walked the beach at dawn without looking toward the resort. I stopped checking their posts, their messages. Not because I didn't care, but because I had finally learned that their validation was never the reward. My peace was. Rebecca's place became more than just a villa. It became a symbol. I received letters from strangers who had read about me online. Women who said they finally asked for a raise, left an abusive relationship, returned to school, reconnected with their mothers, all because they heard my story. It was surreal. I had built this place out of heartbreak, and it became a lighthouse. Not just for others, but for me. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, I stopped wanting them to regret what they did. I stopped needing an apology, because I had built something they could never take away. Me. It's funny how the turning point in a story isn't always when things go wrong. It's often when things go too right. When the momentum carries you so high that the fall, if it comes, is bound to hurt more than anything before. That was what I didn't see coming. I was so busy building, healing, inspiring, that I didn't notice the cracks forming underneath everything I'd created. And the person who would cause it wasn't a stranger. It was someone who shared my blood. The retreat series had grown bigger than I'd ever imagined. Unseen No More was becoming a movement. We had articles in national magazines, partnerships with nonprofits, and a growing list of guests from across the country. Women who had once whispered their stories now stood in front of crowds and spoke with thunder in their voices. My villa, once a quiet beachside refuge, now pulsed with life and resilience. I was proud. I was fulfilled. I was still working tirelessly, managing bookings, mentoring guests, overseeing operations. But I felt like I had finally arrived in my own story. And then Lucas called me. It was a Friday morning, late September. The sun was sharp, and I had just come out of a strategy meeting with one of the mental health consultants we were bringing on for next season's retreat. I saw his name flash across my phone, and for a moment, I almost didn't answer. But something told me I needed to. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Rebecca," he replied, voice stiff. "We need to talk." My stomach tensed. "Okay, I think you've made your point. The villa, the attention, the posts, You've proven whatever you needed to prove, but now it's starting to affect the family. I blinked. Affect the family how? People talk, he said. You're turning something private into a show. You're painting us like villains, and it's not fair. You've built your success by throwing us under the bus. I stood still, the phone pressed tightly to my ear, my hand gripping the balcony rail. I never mentioned anyone by name, I said calmly. I never told a lie. I only told my truth. Well, your truth is making Thanksgiving very awkward this year, he snapped. I exhaled slowly. Maybe if the truth is awkward, the issue isn't me sharing it. Maybe it's what happened. He didn't answer right away. Then, a quieter voice came through the line. Do you want to keep dividing this family, or are you going to let it go? Let it go. Let it go. I couldn't help but laugh, softly, bitterly. Lucas, I said, I spent 30 years letting things go. I let go of birthdays, conversations, invitations, even my own place in this family. And the one time I choose not to stay silent, you call it dividing? His voice rose. You're acting like a victim. I'm not acting, I cut in. I was one, and now I'm not. That's the difference. He hung up. That phone call stayed with me for days. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it made something crystal clear. The more I grew into myself, the more they saw me as a threat. Not because I was cruel, but because I no longer played small. I had changed the rules of engagement, and they didn't know how to follow anymore. But it wasn't until the email came that I understood just how far someone would go to knock me down. It was a legal letter, delivered through my business email, a cease and desist, alleging defamation, exploitation of family image, and damage to reputation, signed by a lawyer representing Lucas and Tara Simmons. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The words blurred. They were accusing me of using family stories for personal profit, of slandering them, of creating a public narrative that damaged their emotional well-being and social standing. It was surreal. I'd never said their names, never posted their faces, but they knew exactly who the story was about. And now they wanted me to shut it down. The villa, the retreats, the platform. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. I called my attorney, Nora. She read through the email and calmly explained it had no legal ground, but that didn't mean it couldn't cause damage. If they took it public, if the media caught wind of a family feud behind a brand built on healing, it could tarnish everything. I sat at the edge of the infinity pool that night, staring into the reflection of stars scattered across the dark water. Arlo brought me tea, left it by my side, and quietly walked away. Even he knew something had shifted. I had a choice to make. I could silence myself again, rebrand, pivot, remove every blog post that referenced my past. Or I could fight, not just for the villa, not just for me, but for every woman who had walked through those doors believing that their story mattered. And I already knew what I was going to do. I hosted a press night the following weekend. I invited journalists, influencers, mental health advocates, and former guests. It wasn't a party. It was a truth-telling event. We gathered in the garden under soft lantern light. I stood on a small wooden stage we'd built for retreat speakers and told my story from beginning to end. I didn't name names. I didn't attack. I just told it like it was, with grace, with fire, with all the tears and fury and beauty that lived in every inch of it. When I finished, the silence was thick, and then applause, but not the loud kind. It was steady, respectful, real. The next day, articles flooded in, but not about drama, about resilience. The headline that stuck was from a writer named Kayla Drew. Rebecca Simmons isn't asking for your permission to heal. She's doing it loudly and unapologetically. That article went everywhere. Lucas and Tara didn't respond, at least not directly, but their lawyer sent a follow-up email. We are no longer pursuing action at this time. I printed that email out and burned it in the fire pit with 3 retreat guests who had received similar threats from people in their own lives. Ex-partners, estranged family members, even bosses. We watched the paper turn to smoke, and it felt like a baptism. That was the climax of it all. Not the lawsuit, not the media, but the moment I stopped living in reaction to what had been done to me and started creating from a place of complete self-possession. They tried to shut me down, And all they did was prove why I had to keep going. Hi, still here, still me, Rebecca Simmons, 32 years old, standing in the middle of a story I once thought would destroy me. But it didn't. It built me. It carved out a version of me that I didn't know existed until I was forced to face what it meant to be unseen, unwanted, and underestimated. And now, here we are, at the end of something, or maybe the beginning of something entirely new. After the fire pit night, something shifted, not just inside me, but around me. The retreat guests, the staff, the locals who'd watched the villa come alive over those months. They didn't just see me as a business owner anymore. They saw me as a woman who had chosen not to disappear, a woman who turned rejection into reinvention. And the world noticed. We started receiving more requests than we could handle. Journalists, conference organizers, even a documentary team who wanted to feature the villa in a short series about modern healing spaces. I said no to most of it, not because I was afraid, but because I had already said everything I needed to say, publicly, at least. Privately, the story wasn't over. My parents showed up one morning, unannounced. It was late October. The humidity had softened, and the mornings had grown cooler, quieter. I was walking barefoot through the main hall, reviewing a list of maintenance updates with Victor when I saw them through the front windows. My mother holding a wide-brimmed sun hat. My father standing slightly behind her, as if unsure whether to step forward or retreat. I met them at the door. "Hi," I said simply. My mom's eyes were watery. She hadn't seen me in person since that awkward dinner months ago. We didn't know if we should come, but we wanted to. My dad added, "We've been watching, from a distance, reading everything." I nodded but didn't say anything. Not yet. My mom reached out, took my hand gently. "Rebecca, I think I was wrong. Now that broke me open in a way no insult ever could. I think I didn't realize how much we leaned on you to keep the family functioning. And in doing that, we never really saw you as someone who needed support too. You were just always the one who seemed okay." "I wasn't," I said. My voice wasn't angry. It was soft, tired. "I know," she whispered. My dad cleared his throat. "We saw that article, the one about you not asking for permission to heal, and it hit me, hard. I thought I raised a strong daughter, but I think what I really did was raise a quiet one, and I want to be better." I looked at them, these two people who had shaped so much of me, now standing here with lowered heads and trembling voices. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was more than I expected. And it was real. "I'm not the same person anymore," I said. "You may not recognize parts of me." My mom gave a gentle smile. "We'll get to know her, if you'll let us." I invited them inside. We sat on the back patio with coffee. I showed them the garden, the meditation deck, the library filled with donated books from retreat guests. I introduced them to Arlo, who greeted them with his usual charm and offered lemon cake like he'd known them forever. We didn't rehash everything. We didn't need to. They were listening now, and that was enough. They stayed the weekend, helped in the kitchen, joined a yoga session. My dad even fixed a squeaky door that had been driving us all crazy for weeks. And on Sunday, before they left, my mom hugged me longer than she ever had in my adult life. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, so soft, but loud enough to undo years of silence. After that weekend, something else shifted, not just with them, but with me. I felt less like I was defending my space, and more like I was living in it fully. There's a difference, you know, when your existence no longer feels like a protest, but a celebration. I had finally crossed into that space. Lucas never came. Not in person, but he sent a letter, handwritten, 2 pages, apologizing for the way he handled everything, not trying to justify it, just acknowledging, and asking if, someday, he and Tara could visit. I haven't decided yet. Forgiveness isn't a door you unlock once and walk through forever. Sometimes it's a gate you open and close 100 times before you feel safe enough to leave it open. But I'm thinking about it. Meanwhile, life at the villa continued. We added a new structure, a glass-walled studio for journaling and art therapy. Rosa started leading cooking classes for women who wanted to rediscover joy through food. Victor taught early morning gardening sessions that doubled as quiet meditation. And me? I started writing. Not blog posts, not social captions, but a book, a real one, not about revenge, about reclamation, about the quiet power of standing in your truth even when it rattles the world around you. The title? Left Out. And then I built the view. Because that's exactly what I did. I didn't fight to be included anymore. I created something so complete that the absence of others no longer felt like loss. It felt like clarity. Every room in that villa holds a piece of me now. The corner window where I stood during the first storm, crying in silence. The steps of the pool where I burned a legal threat and felt reborn. The long table under the pergola where women from all walks of life came together and finally felt seen. And every woman who passes through those doors brings her own unfinished story, her own pain, her own fire. And we don't ask her to be small. We ask her to be honest, because that's where healing begins. And now, I finally understand something I never did before. Revenge isn't about making them feel what you felt. It's about making sure no one else has to. I guess this is where stories are supposed to end, where the last page folds gently and the characters drift off into imagined futures. But life doesn't work that way. There's no neat bow, no single moment when you say, yes, it's done. Healing isn't linear. Growth doesn't have a destination. It just continues. And that's what I've come to understand over time. This isn't the end of my story. It's simply where you leave me. But I'll keep going. A year has passed since that text. The one with the vacation photos. It feels like a different lifetime. And maybe, in some ways, it is. Because the woman who opened that message on a lonely porch in Aurora isn't the same woman speaking to you now. That woman was holding back tears. This one? She's holding keys. To her villa. To her voice. To her future. Rebecca's Place is no longer just a retreat. It's a registered nonprofit organization. We've hosted over 30 immersive retreats in the past 12 months. We've created scholarship programs for women escaping domestic abuse. We've built partnerships with therapists, career coaches, and women's advocacy groups across the country. What started as a personal sanctuary has become a community, a lighthouse, a place where being left out turns into being lifted up. There's a whiteboard in my office now. It takes up the whole wall. On it are the names of every woman who's stayed here. First names only, in different colors. Some are bold and loud, some soft and tentative, but they're all there, each one a thread in the tapestry we're weaving together. Every retreat, we add more. Every month, more voices. One name on that board is mine, written in the upper left corner, Rebecca. Not because I started it, but because I needed it just as much as they did. Maybe more. In February, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership summit in New York. It was my first time on a big stage, lights warm on my face, a crowd of strangers waiting to hear what I had to say. I stood there in a navy pantsuit, palms sweating, heart racing, and I told the truth about the family vacation, about the villa, about building a life when no one offers you space in theirs. The silence in the room was thick. Then came the tears. Then came the applause. Afterward, a woman came up to me backstage. Late 40s, graying hair, red glasses, trembling hands. She didn't say much, just hugged me, and whispered, "I didn't even know I needed to hear that." And that's when I realized something powerful. Sometimes your story doesn't just heal you, it heals others too. Back in Aurora, things have changed. My parents call more. We don't talk about everything, but we talk. My mom sends handwritten letters now, like she's making up for all the ones she never sent before. My dad sends me tools. He knows I've taken to DIY projects in the off-season. It's his way of saying, "I'm here," without actually saying it. Lucas and I haven't seen each other in person yet, but we've exchanged emails. Slow, cautious, like two people trying to rebuild something they're not sure how to name. He sent me a photo last month, his daughter, my niece, wearing a Rebecca's Place t-shirt for her school's show and tell. He said she talked about her cool aunt who helps women become superheroes. I cried when I saw that. Maybe time doesn't fix everything, but it softens the edges. Tara emailed too, a short message. "I didn't understand then. I do now. Thank you for showing us." That was enough. I don't need everyone to apologize anymore. I don't need validation from people who once didn't see me. What I have now is far deeper than that. It's self-recognition. It's peace. It's pride without shame. I've fallen in love too. Not with a person. Not yet. But with life. With myself. With mornings on the deck when the sun kisses the water like it's never done it before. With the sound of laughter from retreat guests who, days earlier, were too broken to speak. With the way Rosa hums old Spanish love songs while she bakes bread. With the rhythm of waves and words and healing. And maybe someday, someone will walk into my life and match that love. But I'm no longer waiting. I'm living. I'm writing. I'm walking barefoot through the villa, humming to myself, knowing I created something whole out of something fractured. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I still remember that porch in Aurora, that phone, that message, that ache. But I don't live there anymore. I live here, in a place I built from silence, in a space I filled with truth, in a life where I am no longer waiting to be invited in. So, if you've ever been left out, if you've ever wondered if they forgot you on purpose, if you've ever sat with the weight of being overlooked, underestimated, or unheard, let this be your reminder. You are not invisible. You are not small. You are not too late. You don't have to force your way in. You can build your own table. You can build your own view. You can build your own life. And when they finally turn around and ask where you went, you can smile, sip your coffee, and say, I stopped waiting. Thank you for listening to my story. Wherever you are, whoever you are, I hope you find your villa. I hope you find your voice. And I hope you never again ask for permission to be seen. Because you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to shine. Have you ever been pushed aside by the very people you trusted the most? Left out not by accident, but by choice? If this story struck a chord with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever turned pain into purpose? And if this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can hear more real stories of women who chose themselves, even when no one else did. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that they don't have to wait for a seat at the table. They can build their own. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the life you deserve is the one you create from the silence they left behind.